So last week we were discussing some differences between the mitzvah of Kiddush all year round and the mitzvah of Kiddush Leil Pesach. We discussed one fundamental difference is the Zman of Kiddush. As the clocks have changed, we have a colloquial early Shabbos, and tomorrow there'll be an early minyan, and one can make Kiddush after Plag HaMincha like Rav, Solisho Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. And that's the halach, and that's the minhag. People make early Shabbos. Yet the Shulchan Aruch, when it comes to Hilchos Pesach, says you should make Kiddush until nightfall. So manishtana halayla zeh mikol halaylos. So we discussed the machlokas, the Magen Avraham versus the Taz, and why not? The Magen Avraham says because it's one of the 4 cups, and just like the Karban Pesach and the matzah have to be eaten at night, so to all the mitzvahs hayom, and therefore it's the first of the 4 cups. So therefore we have to eat it at night. Drink the cup at night. And according to the Taz, no, it's because you need Kiddush b'makam Suda, and that means it has to be Rai for the Suda. And since matzah is the Suda, you can't eat the matzah at night, hence you can't make Kiddush at night. And we explained it's the Taz consistent with his view elsewhere. In fact, early Shabbos tomorrow night. There's a machlokas, the Taz and the Marshal. Everyone agrees, the Gemara says you can make Kiddush early. What about the Suda? Can I finish the meal in broad daylight and take a walk around Niagara on the lake or wherever I want to go? So the Taz says yes, the Maharshal says no. But we see the Taz is consistent with his view. According to the Taz, you have to be able to eat the meal before sunset, or else you wouldn't be able to make Kiddush. It'd be lacking in Kiddush. The fact that the Taz writes that you could be Yotze, everyone agrees. The fact that Gemara says you can make Kiddush early, on Friday, on Erev Shabbos, that means according to the Taz, by definition, you also have to be able to eat the Suda, because according to the Taz, then you can't have a scenario where you can make Kiddush, but you can't have a Suda. Therefore, the Taz is consistent with his view. Tomorrow night, you can make early Shabbos and even finish your meal and bench even before it's dark out. The Marshal says no. So the minhag is, if most of the time our meals are still going anyway, so certainly if you're eating your meal, you might as well have a kazayis achala afterwards. And we said it comes with a kula and a chumrah. The kula, according to the Magen Avraham, if one made Kiddush early before Laila, you wouldn't necessarily have to make a new Kiddush, you just have to make another boy priya guffin on the cup of wine. Well, according to the Taz, you have to do the mitzvah of Kiddush over. And on the other hand, the Magen Avraham says not only do you have to drink the first cup at night, but you also have to finish all 4 cups and all the mitzvahs by chatzos, just like the Karban Pesach. And that could be a klul or a kumrah, depending on what you want. And according to the Taz, there's no restriction. It's true there's a restriction on the matzah, that's equated to the Karban Pesach, but the daled kosas are unlimited, and therefore you can have it later. So the first fundamental difference is tomorrow, even after Plag HaMincha, but by Pesach you have to wait until nighttime. The second difference we said is who has to drink from the cup. There was a machlokas, the Rambam and the BAYT. The Rambam says everyone has to drink, and the BAYT, at least in his Havamina, says one person drinks, everyone listens. And what Maishna Kiddush Leil Pesach make Kiddush Kol Hashana. And the Brisker Rav explained the issue is what is the chiyuv. According to Tosfos, it's a chovas bracha on the coast on four different places in the Haggadah: Kiddush, Sipor Yitzias Mitzrayim, Birkas Hamazon, Hallel. And according to the Rambam, it's a chovas shtiyah. So we B'nai Ashkenaz seem to take the chumras of each, because the Sfardim, even though everyone holds them drinking 4 cups, but Sfardim only make 2 brachas. So we do both. We make a bracha over each place like Tosfos Shita, and we also, like the Rambam, that every person has to drink. Of course, anyone can listen to the Boy Priya Guffin. If you want to listen to someone's Kiddush or the Boy Priya Guffin, that's Shomei Ka'ona. But in terms of the actual drinking, one has to do it themselves. The third nafkamina, how much do you have to drink? So that's what the Gemara said. So that's what the Rishonim also say. This is the Machlokes Tosfos and the Rambam. The Tosfos shows you only have to drink, you have to drink every Friday night. Rov Revi'as, the majority of the Revi'as, in other words, a little more than let's say if it's 4 ounces, so a little more than 2 ounces, no matter how big the cup is. And according to the Rambam, you have to drink rov akos, and that's in the Brisker Rav explains this machlokas goes hand in hand. If you hold it's a chova shtia, the mitzvah is to drink a cup, so I got to drink the whole cup. But if the mitzvah is to make a bracha al akos, so that's the halakha of all year round, I just have to drink. Really, the bracha is the key. The drinking's incidental. I only have to drink a rov reviyah. So that's what we discussed from last time. So another nafkamina between Leil Pesach and all year round is the mitzvah of haseba, the mitzvah of reclining. That we see not only are Chazal interested in terms of how much wine we drink, but they're also interested in the manner in which we drink it. So the Gemara tells us in Pesachim Adaf Kufches, well, the Gemara tells us matzah stricha haseba, matzah requires reclining. Mara einot tzricha seba. Mara does not require reclining. And matzah represents cheirus, and Mara doesn't, so that's the halacha. And we'll get what happens if you don't recline for the matzah. So that's a machlokas. It seems to be a machlokas, the Rush versus the Rambam. And Tosas seems to be mesupik about it. And let's say you eat the matzah without reclining, do I have to go back or not? So the Rush writes, yes. If you don't, achol matzah b'li haseba, it's a no-go, you have to repeat the mitzvah. And the Rambam, although he doesn't say it explicitly, but the way the Brisker Rav others interpret the Rambam, that you don't have to go back. So we'll call it a machlokes, the Rambam versus the Rush, on whether you have to go back. And Tosas, we'll see, seems to be mesupik about the issue. What is in the Kudus ha-machlokes? In other words, what is Tosas in doubt over? What the Rush and the Rambam are certain about, Tosas isn't so sure. What is the issue? The issue is, how do we view the mitzvah of haseba? In other words, is the mitzvah of haseba part and parcel? It's inherent to the mitzvah of matzah, built into the mitzvah of matzah. It's not only eating the matzah, but in the manner you recline. That seems to be the Rosh Shita, that the haseba is connected to the mitzvah of matzah. It's not an independent mitzvah, it's connected. If you eat the matzah without haseba, you didn't fulfill you're not yotzi your mitzvah of matzah. And the Rambam says no, that you haven't done the mitzvah lihidura, but you are yotze. That's why the Rambam Shita is, and the Meiri thing, that you should do haseba the whole meal. It's not just during the matzah, you should be doing haseba the whole Haggadah, and perhaps the whole meal. According to the Rush, no, there's no Indian of haseba the rest of the Haggadah. It's when specifically when you're doing, we see our minhag is to try to do haseba all the time, but specifically when we do the mitzvahs hayom. And that's the Rush. The Rush has the Gemara in Pesachim, a shamish or a waiter that's he eats the matzah without haseba, eino yotze. So the Rush seems to have an explicit Gemara that if he's standing up and he's not reclining, you don't get. So what does the Rambam do? So the Brisker Rav says, no, you're right, eino yotze. You're not yotze the mitzvah of haseba. That's the matzah you are yotze, but so this is how you interpret the Gemara. So that seems to be that's what Tosas is mesupik about. And so halacha l'maisa, we pass like the Rush, that one should be, one has to be careful. One should make sure they recline, over when they eat the matzah. Therefore, you don't come into the shaila of, of having to eat the matzah again, over again. So that's by matzah. What about by yayin? So yayin, also the Gemara says that you need haseba by wine as well. But we have 4 cups. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, 4 cups. How much? And that's a discussion. What is by matzah? Also, that's a discussion. What the ikar of matzah is the matzah in the beginning. So at least if you're, it's a machlokes in the Rishonim. Is the ikar matzah the afikomen? Is the ikar matzah before the meal? So that gets into that as well, and that gets into how much you have to eat, etc. So what about the wine? So they say in the name of Rav Nachman. The students say in the name of Rav Nachman, some say you need haseba, some say you don't need haseba. But what do you mean? So which one did he say? So lo kasha, it depends. He said by two cups you have to recline, other 2 you don't. So they're both right. It depends what. However, the Gemara doesn't spell out, and it's unclear. We don't know which which ones he said it over. Did he say the first 2 cups you recline and not the last 2? Or did he say the last 2 cups? So it's unclear. And the Gemara gives different compelling reasons for each, gives svaras for each side. So the Gemara concludes, Aidi va'aidi by haseba. The Gemara concludes that each one, all 4 require reclining. So it's unclear within Rav Nachman. There is no consensus in terms of how many you have to recline on, because we don't know the first 2. The Gemara concludes you recline on all 4. So, and that's what we do. We recline on all 4. And what happens again if you don't? So what's the halacha if you don't recline during the Dalet Kosos? So halacha l'maisa, we paskin the first 2 cups you go back for. The last 2 cups you don't go back for. Why? What kind of compromise halacha is that? So it's nothing to do. It's not a fundamental difference in the first 2 cups and the last 2, because we say aidi by haseba. But the difference is, during the first 2 cups, strictly speaking, you're allowed to drink. So you made Kiddush, even though a minhag is not to eat during the Haggadah section, but strictly speaking, you made Kiddush, you're allowed to eat. So therefore, if you forgot to recline, there's no problem of eating or drinking, so go ahead and have another cup of wine. But we know once you eat the afikomen, you have to leave the tam matzah b'piv, so you can't recline over the last 2 cups. So therefore, since it's a shaila, whether you're allowed to eat, so therefore it's a suffix whether you have to go back or not. So therefore, that's how we pass. That's how pshara lahalacha. The first 2 cups you recline, and if you don't recline, you drink it over. And then the last 2 you don't have to. Once you have in mind, when you make the bracha, bor bregaf, have in mind any wine you're going to drink during the meal. But if you have that kavanah, you'll probably remember to recline also during the 4 cups. So that's the Gemara. So comes along the Ran, famous kash of the Ran. What's going on here? We know we have a famous principle throughout Shas. Safek d'oraisa l'chumra, a doubt regarding a biblical or strict. Safek d'rabbanan l'kula, a doubt regarding a rabbinical or lenient. So last I checked, the mitzvah has the Dalet Kosos is clearly d'rabbanan, and probably haseba as well is probably a mitzvah d'rabbanan, but certainly Dalet Kosos is d'rabbanan. Women are included in the mitzvah. And the 3 mitzvahs, Megillah, Chanukah, and Dalet Kosos, those are all mitzvahs d'rabbanan. So the Ran asks, why if we're not sure which ones you recline over, the Gemara should have pick at least, pick 2, only recline 2 out of 4, or whatever the kula should be, but certainly not say, okay, we're not sure reclining all 4. It's a case of safek d'rabbanan l'kula, and therefore we don't seem to be l'kula. It seems to recline in all 4. It seems to be l'kula. So why don't we apply? Why doesn't the Gemara apply the usual principle of safek d'rabbanan l'kula? That's the famous kash of the Ran. So the Ran gives 2 answers. His first answer is, you're right. Really, we should apply safek d'rabbanan l'kula, and really we do make a adin. It's only a chumrah that on a milsa shalo tirchan tani, which doesn't involve a burden. Certainly it doesn't involve any extra work. Big deal. Drink the wine and recline. So really, if you drank it without reclining, you don't have to go back. But if it's not a big deal to recline, because something about it cool. But if it's not a big deal to recline, why not? So therefore, we say go ahead and recline in all 4. But really, something about it cool really does apply. But we're strict because it's a simple thing to do. The Ran says this by Dalet Kosos. The Mishnah Berurah applies it to all cases of safek d'rabbanan. If it's a case where it's not a big deal to do, even though me'ikar adin, you can be lenient, there's no reason not. That's the answer of the Ran. But the Ran likes the second answer. It's a much more fundamental answer, and it tells us something about the klal of safek d'rabbanan l'kula. So they point out that the Gemara tells us that. So the Ran says, why don't we? So the Ran second answer is saying we don't apply the principle of safek d'rabbanan l'kula. Why not? He says because if you're going to apply the principle of safek d'rabbanan you're going to end up with a tarete desasa. You're going to end up with the wrong conclusion. And anytime you're going to end up with the wrong answer, you can't apply the principles. What does he mean? So as follows. So what the Ran says, it's a suffix hashakol. We have no reason to pick the first two cups, so they're both equal. They both have equal svaras. I can't say, okay, let me pick this one. So I have no right to pick one or the other. So what will I do? Okay. So I'll get to the first two cups. I'll say suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. Great, I'm not going to recline. I'll get to the last two cups. I'll say suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. Won't recline. I'll be okay the mitzvah of haseba. I'll never recline. That's clearly wrong. Rav Nachman clearly stated you should be reclining on 2 out of the 4 cups. If you take the principle of suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, you can end up not reclining at all. That's clearly wrong. So in a makam tarte desastre, in a place where suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula is going to lead to the wrong result, we don't apply it. And in fact, it's a famous Beis Halevi. I think it was in the newspapers. A long time ago. But someone wrote in the newspaper, or someone wrote to the Beis Halevi that we shouldn't have to keep Shemitah Bizman Hazeh. We shouldn't have to keep the laws of Shemitah anymore. Why? Because Bizman Hazeh, Shemitah is only D'Rabbanan. Shemitah is D'Rabbanan today. And there's another machlokes. There's a machlokes, the Rambam versus the Gaonim. How do you count? Do you count, let's say, by Shemitah and Yoga, do I do 1 to 49 and then back to 1? Or I do 1 to 50, then back to 1? So this person suggested, great idea. Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. Shemitah is only d'Rabbanan today. Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. I don't have to keep Shemitah. So comes on the Beis Halevi and says, you obviously didn't learn the Ran in Arvei Pesachim. Because it's true, you can't apply Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, because what's going to happen? Every year I'm going to say, is this Shemitah? If you say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, there won't be a Shemitah, and everyone knows there is a Shemitah. It's just a Shemitah d'Rabbanan, but everyone knows Shemitah exists. So therefore, in a case where you apply Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, it's going to lead to a ridiculous conclusion, a wrong, erroneous conclusion, hence we don't apply. So that's the Ran's second answer. We don't, if you can't say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, or else you'll end up being okay the mitzvah of hasebel gamre, and that's certainly wrong. We know we have to recline at least during 2 out of the 4 cups. That's the second answer of the Ran. So they point out that, that's the second answer. A3 is as follows. The third answer is not from the Ran. Other Rishonim and Achronim tune into the Ran's Kasha. They suggest different answers. The Shiltei Hagiborim, he suggests as follows. He says, you know why we don't say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula? Because when do we say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula? That's only when, let's say you have a classical machlokas, 2 Amoram in the Gemara, 2 established opinions, and now we're not sure, okay, how do we paskin? So it's a suffix, so then, okay, a suffix in a case, but the opinions aren't in doubt, we know who says what, we're just not sure what the psak is, or in this case, it's a suffix, then we can say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. But here, it's not Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula, because we're not sure who says Rav Nachman even said it. Here we're not sure the first 2 cups. We know only one person is right within Rav Nachman. Either he said to recline for the first 2 cups or the last 2 cups. So then the Shiltei Hagiborim says we don't say Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula if it's the case where someone is saying you have 2 opinions in what Rav Nachman. If Rav Nachman had a machlokas with another Rav, and then it could be a Suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. But here it's 2 opinions. Rav Nachman only said one of them, so we're not going to apply the principle of Suffix. That's what the Shiltei Hagiborim says. A4 to the question of the Ran is Avaji Yoseph has an interesting pshat he quoted in his Agad, I think from the Divrei Tzvi or someone. So what's the simple pshat of the Gemara? The Gemara is that really it's 2 opinions on what Rav Nachman holds, the first 2 cups or the last 2 cups. So therefore, and then the Gemara goes through different reasons, and the Gemara concludes, ID by. So the way the Ran learned the Gemara, and perhaps simple pshat, is we assume basically the Gemara is working with Rav Nachman, and the Gemara and the Gemara's question is, why don't we apply Safek Rav? The Ran saying, why don't we apply Safek Rabbanan? In other words, we're following Rav Nachman's view, but why not apply Safek Rabbanan L'Kula? Avati Yosef has an interesting explanation. He says, no. When the Gemara says, I did by Seba, we're passing against Rav Nachman. You're right, Rav Nachman says only 2 out of the 4. And okay, so halacha would be very nice, Rav Nachman. We're not following you. I die by Seba is B'Torah's Vadai. The way Avadi Yosef quotes some, and therefore, if that's true, then it's nothing to do with the call of Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. That's how Avadi, he says, Safek Rabbanan is L'Kula. But there's no what kind of Safek. We don't passing like Rav Nachman, and that's why it's I divided by Haseba. That's the 4th explanation. The 5th one is on the Beis HaLevi, based on the Tosas and Beah, Daf Yud Beis, that when do we say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula? That's only if it's exclusively a kula. In other words, that's it. Like we know in general, many times, a kula in one way is a chumrah, like we said the Magen Avraham and Taz. So, for the Magen Avraham, if you make Kiddush early before nightfall, you yotze. But if you can't have the other cups after chatzos, or the famous line of Rav Chaim, he's machmir on pikuach nefesh, but he's not making one. So usually, so when do we apply the principle of Safek Rabbanan L'Kula? It's only if it's exclusively a kula. But here is, every kula is going to be a chumrah, because if you're going to say, let me recline over the first 2 cups, then it's going to be a chumrah for the first 2, but it's a kula for the last 2, and the reverse. And therefore he says, if you're going to take the case only reclining over the first 2 or the last 2, you're going to end up it's going to be a kula with the chumrah, and based on the Tosas and Beah, right? The only time we apply the klal of Safek Rabbanan L'Kula, it has to be exclusively a kula. So that's how he answers. So the Ran's kasha, why I divide by Aseb, it's Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. Either Ran says, we really do apply it, but it's no big deal, so go ahead and recline anyway. And that's one answer. The second answer is no, you can't apply it because you're okay the mitzvah Aseba. You'll be a tartei desastre, I'll never recline. You have the Shotei HaGiborim, it's only a Safek Rabbanan L'Kula if you have established positions. But if it's 2 people saying what one person said, one's wrong, one's right, you can't say Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. You have the Avad Yosef, it's nothing to do with Safek Rabbanan L'Kula. We don't pass like Rav Nachman, and we're saying about Torah's Vada, you have to recline. And we have the 5th shot, the Beis HaLevi, based on Tosas, and since it's now exclusively L'Kula, you don't apply it. That was the Ran. So this Ran seems to be sosi or another. This is the kasha of the Mishnah Lamelech. The Mishnah Melech says that there's another case that seems to be similar, but apparently it's not, because the Ran's going to say differently. We just celebrated Purim not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and we know there's halacha. The Mishnah tells us in the beginning of Megillah Nikras, B'Yid Aleph, B'Yid Beis, Yid Gimel, B'Yid Aleph, B'Tetzvav. And so we know there are basically 2 days of, in fact that's the binyan, the Cheshik Shlomo says, how come it says Purim 5 times in the Megillah, twice it's spelled Mole with the Vavs, and 3 times it's spelled Chaser. So he says, what's the because there are 2 days where it's full Purim, Yud Dalet and Tetzvav. But Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and Gimel, even though it's only a special dispensation for the Kfarim to read the Megillah, maybe do Matanas Rav Yonim, but all the other mitzvahs, the Shalach Manas, the students, that has to be done on Yud Aleph. So it's interesting, Machokos over there, Rashi and Tosfos, when they go in on Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and Yud Gimel, so they read the Megillah. Who reads the Megillah? So Rashi writes, they go in, obviously why are they going in? Because they're Amaratzim, they don't know how to read. They go in, and some of them, B'nai Ya'ir reads the Megillah. That's what Rashi says. So Tosfos says, nothing doing. That can't be. How could a B'nai Ya'ir read the Megillah for the B'nai Kfar? Someone who's not a Bar Chiyuva cannot read it for an Eino Bar Chiyuva. So hence Tosfos rejects Rashi. He says, no, they weren't Amaratzim. It was someone from the village who knew how to read. It was just a nice meeting place that everyone could get together, but really it was the Kfarim reading for themselves, it's not a Shiloh. So what would Rashi answer the Tosfos Kasha? According to Rashi, how could the villagers read? So the Achronim explain as follows. It's not a Kasha. There's interesting Yerushalmi in terms of I think it says a Ben Krach can't read for a Ben Ayer, and a Ben Ayer can't read for a 14th can't read for the 15th, and that's the fifth. So let's assume we assume like that Yerushalmi. So what the Achronim point out is a fundamental difference between that. Even if that's true, that we'll see the maybe it's a question. I'm not saying it isn't true, but that's a discussion. Let's assume it is true that someone who's a Bnei Ayer can't read on the 15th, that someone who's on the 15th can't read for the 14th. That's not a kasha on Rashi, because Rashi holds fundamentally the Bnei Kfar are basically Ben Yudalid. As we see, they're reading the Suda, they're doing Shalach Manas. It's a special dispensation by Kriyas HaMegillah. So Echinami, I agree maybe a Ben Ayer can't read for a Ben Krach, but it's not a kasha. They're all part of the same Chiyuv, Rashi will hold, and therefore it's all the same, and therefore it's not a kasha. Interesting, there's if you love Purim, it depends if you love Purim or hate Purim. In other words, do you want to be obligated in both days of Purim or none? So that's a discussion among the Achronim. In other words, could you go ahead and put yourself in a situation where you exempt yourself from Purim? In other words, does it work? Some Achronim suggest, we don't necessarily pass in this way, but if you go to Yerushalayim on the 14th, and you go to Tel Aviv on the 15th, so maybe each morning at Nates or Alos is the Koveya when the Chiyuv is. So could you suggest that? Some Achronim suggest that. We don't think the Chazon Ish writes in the way we assume that no, wherever you are, you dawl it in the morning. Doesn't make a difference. I don't care where you are on the 15th. If you're in Yerushalayim on the 4th, that's when you chayv. In other words, we don't play musical chairs every day. And therefore, those are the different days of Megillah. So the 14th and 15th. So what happens if someone is a Safek Muchas Chama? So the Gemara talks about someone we don't know if you are a walled city during the time of Yeshua ben Nun or not. So when do you read the Megillah? So again, it's a Gemara, but the way you interpret the Gemara, it's the Machokas, the Rambam, and the Ran. The Rambam writes that you read both days. If you're a Safek Muchlas Chama Yeshua ben Nun, you read on Yud Daled and you read on Tetzvav. I want to Safek Drabanan Lakula, so maybe Megillah is different. He holds it's different Kabbalah, whatever the so the problem Pashas he holds is just a minute. Maybe it's just a minute. It's a minute Chasidus, but the Rambam writes you should read on both days. The Ran writes you only read on Yud Daled, because Safek Drabanan Lakua. So the Mishnah Lamelach jumps in the Ran and says, how come when it comes to the Gemara in Salcham and Daf Kufches, Rav Nachman says 2 out of 4 we don't have a Seder. We don't apply Safek Drabanan Lakua. It's a similar case. While the case of the Safek Muchlas Chamo, we say if he's consistent with his view, he should say you should read on both days. Why over by the Dawah he says, well, Machmir, we recline on all 4. So you would think he would also say we don't apply Safek Drabanan Lakua here, and we read on Megillah on both days. Yet he says only Yudalit. That's the kasha of the Mishnah Lamelach. So the Mishnah will answer it's no kasha. That there might be similar, but they certainly aren't identical, because there's a fundamental difference between the case of Dalit Kosos and the case of the Muchvas Chama. It's not so much Dalit Kosos and Muchvas Chama, but it's the case. In the case in the Gemara, what are we trying to do here? We're being Koveya the din of Aseba. In other words, we're trying to determine for Lidoros, when someone's going to be drinking Dalit Kosos, which cups do you require on? The first 2, the last 2? So if we apply Safek Drabanan Lakula, we'll be okay the mitzvah of Aseba. You're never going to recline any of the 4 cups, and we know so that we can't apply Safek Drabanan Lakula because we know there's a mitzvah of Aseba, and therefore the Ran can't apply Safek Drabanan Lakula here. But in the case of this walled city, the halacha is already set up. We already know the halacha. If you live in Muchlas Chama Yeshua ben Nun, you read on the 15th. Anywhere else the 14th. Here it's a specific suffix in your town, Tiberias, whatever the case was. You have it, so in your case it's a local issue. We're not worried about Safek Drabanan, so we can apply Safek Drabanan Lakua if it's a local issue. But if it's an issue of being okay, the mitzvah Aseba Lagamre, So that's why. So that's what the answer to the Mishnah Moses. It's not a steer in the Ran. It's fundamentally two different cases. That's the answer of the Mishnah Lamelech. The Rav Shlomo Kluger, he has a different answer. He says that a different answer. You know what the difference is? Again, he quotes the Yerushalmi, I think, which says, again, against what we're saying now, but he wants to say, according to at least one opinion, that no, everybody agrees that even if someone b'diavad, if a ben krach, if someone someone who lived in the walled city, but he heard the Megillah on the 14th, so he says b'diavad, he claims based on different sources that the person, Chazal set it up, and no matter what happened, it's true they set up to 15 for walled cities, but if they set it up where no matter what, everyone's Yotze on the 14th, and if you did on the 14th, so according to the way Shlomo Kluger is learning, again we could debate whether this point is true, but according to the way he's assuming, so no matter what, if you lay on the 14th, you Yotze. So therefore the Ran's not worried. You read on the 14th, b'diavad you Yotze. Even if you were a mukvas chamishol benun, b'diavad you Yotze. But by Dalet Kosas, it's not going to be. If you're going to say Savak D'Rabbanan L'Kula and pick the first two cups, maybe it was really the last two cups, or if you pick the last, so therefore you by the Dalet Kosas. You can't do it like the Beis HaLevi. It's a kula which is going to be a chumrah. That if you're picking the wrong two, and therefore you have to recline. That's why when it comes to Dalet Kosas, the Ran has to say all 4 cups you have to recline. But when it comes to the case of Safek Mukvas Chama, so we see that's a doubt that could be resolved. So that's how they answer up the Mishnah Lamel. So we had another fundamental nafkamina between Leil Pesach. All year round we make Kiddush. We said we make Kiddush early. You don't have to drink the cup yourself. You don't have to drink the cup at all, and you don't certainly have to drink a rov kos. And as well you don't have to recline. But the night of Pesach, there's a mitzvah of Selevan. That's why there's one more thing in the Gemara. There's interesting Nitziv. What's the pshat in the Gemara? Like the Shaila, do I recline on the first 2 cups, the last 2 cups? The Gemara gives different reasons, but Tosfos is there right because what is we know when do we make the bracha of Gal Yisrael? We make the bracha. We know in between at the end of the second cup. So before we would put the second cup. So when the Gemara Brachos talks about the Gula from Mitzrayim, what are we talking about? Was the Gula, when did it actually happen? Did it happen after when the Jews left Mitzrayim? Was that considered the Gula? Because bottom line, finally they were freed from Paro. Oh no, the Ikar Gula is after Kriyas Yamsuf when they were saved. So it's a discussion whether the Ikar Gula is Yitzias Mitzrayim or no? So there's a pasuk in Parshas Beshalach that Chazal interpret that the Jewish people did Haseba. There's a pasuk in Parshas Beshalach. So everyone agrees to the physical facts. The Jews did Haseba in between Yitzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf. By Yeshiv Ha'am, the pasuk says in Beshalach. So that's the fact of life. They did that Haseba in between Gula from Mitzrayim or before Kriyas Yamsuf. So what's the machlokes, the Nitziv, right? What's the Ikar? If you hold the Ikar Gula as Yitzias Mitzrayim, so when did the Jews do Haseba? That's after Gula. So that's the Shita. Then you recline in the last, because while I'm a slave, why am I reclining? I don't recline until but if you hold the Ikar Gula as Kriyas Yamsuf, so the Jews still recline before the Gula. So that's how the Nitziv. This interesting chapter by the Nitziv to explain the different Lashonas. So that's some of the issues regarding Haseba, the famous kasha of the Ran. Why we only say something about L'Kula and the 5 answers, and the Mishnah Lamel was kasha in the steer of the Ran and his answer and the answer of Shlomo Kluger.